If you ever doubted the kindness of wild animals, this story will change your mind forever. A lone hiker, a terrifying fall, and an unlikely savior, a mother bear. What she did next left even wildlife experts speechless. Stay with me because this story will amaze you. And hey, if you love incredible real-life survival stories, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about the wildest animal encounter you've ever heard. Now let's dive in. The Alaskan wilderness stretched endlessly, a breathtaking but unforgiving expanse of towering pines, rushing rivers, and jagged cliffs. It was the kind of place where nature ruled, where beauty and danger coexisted in perfect balance. Daniel Carter, an experienced hiker, had spent years exploring rugged landscapes, but nothing could have prepared him for what lay ahead. That morning, he had set off on what was supposed to be a simple solo hike, following a narrow trail along the mountainside. The air was crisp, the scent of pine thick in his lungs, and the distant call of an eagle echoed through the valley. But one wrong step changed everything. As he navigated a rocky slope, his foot suddenly slipped on loose gravel. His body lurched forward, gravity pulling him down before he even had time to react. The world spun violently around him as he tumbled down the steep ravine, hitting rocks and scraping against sharp branches. His head slammed against a boulder, sending a blinding pain through his skull. Then, darkness. When Daniel came to, pain engulfed him. His leg throbbed unbearably, twisted at an unnatural angle. Worse still, a deep gash ran across his arm, blood soaking into his torn jacket. He tried to move, but the pain was unbearable. Panic set in. He was alone. He had no cell signal. No one knew where he was. The sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows across the forest. The temperature would drop soon. If he didn't find help or shelter, he wouldn't make it through the night. Then he heard it. A low, deep growl. His heart pounded. Lifting his head slightly, he scanned his surroundings, and his breath caught in his throat. A massive bear stood just a few feet away. Her thick, dark fur rippled under the fading sunlight, her eyes locked onto him. He could see the powerful muscles beneath her skin, the immense strength she carried in every step. And yet, something was different. She wasn't charging. She wasn't baring her teeth. She was watching. Daniel remained frozen, every instinct telling him not to move. His pulse thundered in his ears. This was it. He was injured, helpless. The bear could end him in seconds. But she didn't. Instead, she took a slow, deliberate step closer. Then another. The massive creature sniffed the air, tilting her head slightly as if assessing him. Daniel's breath came in short gasps. What was she doing? Then, to his utter disbelief, the bear turned away and disappeared into the forest. Daniel exhaled shakily. Had she lost interest? Or was she planning to return with her cubs for an easy meal? He didn't know. All he knew was that he needed to stay awake, to fight against the exhaustion threatening to pull him under. But just as his eyelids grew heavy, the sound of crunching leaves reached his ears. The bear was back. And this time, she had something in her mouth. Daniel squinted, trying to focus. Leaves. Not just any leaves, some he recognized as yarrow, a plant known for its healing properties. She dropped them beside him. His breath caught. Had she brought them for him? His mind struggled to make sense of what was happening. Was this a coincidence? A bizarre twist of fate? Or was the bear actually trying to help him? ***. Whatever the reason, Daniel knew one thing. He had just witnessed something beyond belief. And it was only the beginning. If you thought what happened in Chapter 1 was unbelievable, just wait. This is where things take an even wilder turn. A mother bear had found a wounded man in the forest. But instead of attacking, she did something no one could have expected. Stick around, because this story will blow your mind. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment if you've ever heard of an animal showing unexpected kindness. Daniel's head swam with pain, but his thoughts were even more chaotic. Why had the bear brought him healing plants? It didn't make sense. Wild animals weren't known for acts of compassion, especially not massive predators like this one. Yet there she was. The bear stood just a few feet away, watching him with deep brown eyes that, for some reason, didn't seem threatening. Instead, they held something that felt eerily close to concern. Daniel swallowed hard, his throat dry. He had two choices: sit frozen in fear or trust that this bizarre situation wasn't a trick of his injured mind. Slowly, he reached for the leaves she had dropped beside him. His fingers trembled as he picked them up. He wasn't a survival expert, but he'd read enough to know that yarrow could help slow bleeding. Was this really happening? The bear huffed softly, almost like she was waiting. Then, she did something that sent shivers down Daniel's spine. She nudged him. Not roughly, not aggressively, but gently, as if encouraging him to move. Daniel gritted his teeth. His leg throbbed with unbearable pain, but the urgency in the bear's presence made his decision for him. He had to try. He pushed himself up slightly, groaning as the broken limb sent shockwaves of pain through his body. His vision blurred, but before he could collapse again, he felt something warm and strong press against his side. The bear. She had moved closer, positioning herself so that he could lean against her massive frame. Daniel's breath hitched. This wasn't normal. This wasn't instinct. This was something else. Asterisk. Trembling, he allowed himself to rest against her, feeling the unbelievable strength of the creature beside him. The warmth of her thick fur was surprising, almost comforting against the cold forest air. Then, just when he thought nothing could be more shocking, she began to pull him. Gently, carefully, she grasped the fabric of his torn jacket with her powerful jaws and started dragging him across the forest floor. Not toward danger, but toward safety. Daniel wanted to resist, to question it, but he had no energy left. His survival now rested in the most unlikely hands, or rather, pause, As the sun dipped lower behind the trees, the forest swallowed them whole. And Daniel could do nothing but trust the wild. If you thought what happened so far was unbelievable, just wait. This next part will leave you speechless. A mother bear wasn't just watching over an injured man. She was helping him. But where was she taking him? And what? Stay with me, because what happens next is something no one could have expected. Before we continue, if you love mind-blowing animal survival stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Have you ever heard of an animal helping a human like this? Let's discuss below. Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness as the bear dragged him through the forest. The rough terrain sent jolts of pain through his broken leg, but exhaustion was overtaking him. His mind fought between fear and awe. Was he really being saved by a bear? The scent of damp earth and pine needles filled the air as they moved deeper into the woods. The sounds of the wild surrounded them: distant owl calls, rustling leaves, the occasional snap of a twig. And then, after what felt like an eternity, the bear finally stopped. Daniel forced his eyes open and saw something that sent a chill down his spine. A den. The entrance was a hollowed-out space beneath the roots of an enormous tree, shielded from the wind and hidden from predators. Was this her home? His pulse quickened. Had she saved him only to keep him as food for later? Was he now trapped? His breath came in shaky gasps as the bear released her grip on his jacket and stepped back. She didn't attack. She didn't growl. Instead, she simply sat down. Her deep brown eyes studied him, her massive body blocking the entrance like a silent guardian. Her cubs, barely visible in the shadows, peeked out from behind her legs, their curious eyes flickering between their mother and the strange, injured human. Daniel tried to move, but his body was too weak. The chill of the night had begun creeping into his bones, but the den was surprisingly warm. The bear had brought him to shelter. Then, something even stranger happened. The mother bear huffed softly, lowered her massive head, and began licking his wounds. Daniel flinched at first, but there was no aggression in her touch. Instead, her rough tongue carefully cleaned the dried blood from his arm. He had seen animals do this to their young, but never in his wildest dreams had he imagined a bear tending to his injuries. His mind swirled with disbelief. Why was she helping him? Why wasn't she attacking? Was it possible that she saw him as one of her own? The rhythmic sound of her breathing and the warmth of the den were lulling him into unconsciousness. His pain dulled slightly, And despite the insanity of it all, a strange sense of safety settled over him. As his eyelids grew heavy, Daniel realized something incredible. He wasn't just surviving this night, he was being protected. If you thought spending a night in a bear's den was the craziest part of this story, think again, because what happens next will leave you speechless. A mother bear had done the unthinkable, she saved a wounded man instead of attacking him. But when Daniel woke up the next morning, he realized his unbelievable journey was far from over. Before we continue, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment. What would you do if a bear saved your life? Let's talk. Now let's get into it. Daniel woke up to the golden light of dawn filtering through the trees. For a brief moment he forgot where he was. Then he saw her. The mother bear sat at the entrance of the den, her massive silhouette outlined against the morning sky. Her cubs nestled close to her, their tiny forms twitching as they dreamed. And Daniel? He was alive. His injuries still throbbed, but the bleeding had slowed. The dried herbs the bear had left near him were still scattered at his side. And though his broken leg sent sharp pains through his body, he felt stronger than he had the night before. This was impossible. He had survived a night in the wilderness. Not because of his own skills, but because a wild animal, one of the most feared predators in the forest, had protected him. The bear turned her head slightly, as if sensing that he was awake. She let out a soft huff, not a growl, not a threat, just a simple sound. Then she did something even more shocking. She stood up, stepped forward, and nudged him again. Just like before. Daniel sucked in a breath. His heart pounded as he realized what she was trying to do. She wasn't keeping him here. She wanted to help him leave, ***. The idea sent a fresh wave of disbelief through him. But why would she do this? Was it because he was weak, like one of her cubs? Did she see him as something that needed protection? There was no time for answers. If he had a chance to get out of this forest alive, he had to take it. Gritting his teeth, he tried to shift his body. Pain ripped through his leg, but he forced himself to move. His breath came in sharp gasps, but the bear stayed close. Step by step, she led him out of the den. And then she guided him. Daniel could hardly believe it. She walked a few feet ahead, then stopped, looking back as if making sure he was following. Every time he hesitated, she nudged him forward again. The forest was still quiet in the early morning light, but Daniel knew the dangers hadn't disappeared. Cold. Exhaustion. He didn't know how far he could make it, but one thing was certain, ***, he wasn't alone, ***. And then, in the distance, he heard it. Voices. His pulse quickened. A search party? He had no way of knowing for sure, but he had to try. This was his chance. He turned to the bear one last time. Her deep brown eyes met his. No words were spoken, there didn't need to be. Somehow, in a way he couldn't explain, he knew she understood. With one final huff, she turned and disappeared into the trees. As if she had only stayed long enough to see him safe. Daniel stumbled forward, toward the voices. And within minutes, he was found, ***. If you thought this survival story couldn't get any more unbelievable, just wait. Daniel had survived against all odds, thanks to a mother bear. But when he finally told his rescuers the truth, their reaction was something he never expected. Before we continue, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. Do you believe animals have a deeper connection with humans than we think? Let's discuss. Daniel could barely keep his eyes open as the rescue team rushed toward him. "He's alive," one of them shouted. Strong hands grabbed him, supporting his weight as he was lowered onto a stretcher. A wave of relief washed over him, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. The mother bear. Had she really saved him? Or had his mind, weakened by exhaustion and pain, created a story too wild to be real? As they carried him to the helicopter, the lead rescuer, a man in his 40s with a thick beard and concerned eyes, crouched beside him. "What happened out here, son?" Daniel licked his cracked lips, his voice barely a whisper. "A bear." The rescuer's expression turned grim. "A bear attacked you?" Daniel shook his head, gathering his strength. "No, she saved me." A long pause. The rescuers exchanged glances. You're saying a bear helped you? Daniel nodded weakly. Dragged me to her den. Kept me warm. Gave me plants. His voice faltered. He knew how crazy it sounded. One of the rescuers, a younger guy with a skeptical smirk, chuckled. That's a new one. But the older man didn't laugh. He studied Daniel closely. A mother bear, you said? Daniel nodded again. For a long moment, the older man said nothing. Then, with a slow exhale, he murmured, It's not impossible. The younger rescuer scoffed. Come on, Frank. Bears don't do that. Frank glanced at him. Not usually. But I've heard stories. Old legends. Hunters, trappers. Some say bears have an instinct to protect the weak, just like they do their own cubs. Daniel's mind swirled. Could that be true? Had she seen him as one of her own? The helicopter blades roared to life. As they lifted off, Daniel peered down at the vast, endless forest below. Somewhere down there, she was walking away, returning to her cubs. And no one would ever believe what she had done. Or would they? Daniel survived against all odds, but his story wasn't over yet. A mother bear had saved his life, but now, as he recovered, one question haunted him. Would he ever see her again? Before we dive in, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. If you were in Daniel's shoes, would you go back to find her? Let's discuss. Months passed. Daniel's injuries had healed, but his mind couldn't let go of what had happened in the forest. Doctors and reporters all had their own theories. Delirium, hallucinations, sheer luck. But Daniel knew the truth. She had saved him. And he had to see her one last time. Against the warnings of friends and family, he returned to the forest. This time, he was prepared, equipped with food, supplies, and a camera. He retraced his steps, following the trail he barely remembered from that fateful night. His heart pounded as he approached the clearing where he had last seen her. Would she still be here? Would she even remember him? For hours, he waited. The forest was alive with sounds, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of an eagle, but no sign of her. Just as doubt crept in, he heard it. A familiar huff. His breath caught as she stepped into view. Her massive frame was just as he remembered. But something was different. Her cubs were bigger now, stronger. She had raised them well. Daniel didn't move. He knew better than to approach. He simply stood there watching. And then, the unthinkable happened. She met his gaze. For a brief, powerful moment, understanding passed between them. No words, no gestures, just a silent acknowledgement of the impossible bond they shared. Then, with a slow turn, she disappeared into the trees. Daniel exhaled, a mixture of awe and gratitude washing over him. He had gotten his answer. She remembered. And though they were from two different worlds, for one moment in time, their paths had crossed in a way no one would ever believe.